Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Middle Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Civivi and Elijah Isham Mckenna. Very interesting little, I guess, budget front flipper. Depends on how you define budget. Yeah, I've got a lot to say about this. This was sent to me by the Apex Pass Run group, so thank you so much. Shout out to the Apex Pass Run group. That means, I believe, by extension, Civivi themselves, so thank you very much for that. Also, thank you so much to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. If you'd like to check out my Patreon, there's, of course, a link down in the description. You can get your hands on some cool stickers and some other benefits. And, of course, be sure to follow me on Instagram. Let's go ahead and get a measurement on this guy real quick. Overall length of the Civivi Mckenna coming in at about 6 3/4 inches overall. Blade length is coming in at just shy of 3 inches. If you measure it from back here, maybe it's a little over. You measure it from about right here, which is where I always try to measure it, the peak of the G10 scale. Something in there. Call it around 3. Be careful with that. That's a legality limit, of course, in some places. Blade length or cutting edge length is coming in at about 2.8 inches overall. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. The Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall, so you can see there's definitely not a large knife. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in at about 8 inches overall. Last but not least, the smallest knife that I generally carry, the Spyderco Para 3. Para 3 coming in a little longer at 7 1/4, though I will point out there is a pretty, fairly substantial difference in the overall cutting edge, the Mckenna being the victor there. How's the action in the sky? So, this knife runs using my new flashlight today. This will be listed down in the description henceforth on reviews. But this knife is running on bearings, and initially when I looked in here, I was like, that looks like phosphor bronze, so I actually pulled the scale off and looked. It definitely is bearings, and it feels like bearings. It's a front flipper. And I gotta say, so, you know, I've handled a lot of knives, I've handled a lot of front flippers. The first time I handled a front flipper, it was a little bit awkward. Front flippers that don't have exposed frame locks are definitely easier to manipulate. I find that when I, alter my hand position to adjust for a front flipper, where I want to put my fingers to brace, especially on a knife that doesn't have a lot of room to begin with, changes, and oftentimes will put excess pressure or unnecessary pressure on that exposed frame lock. But because this is a liner lock, it really doesn't matter. And honestly, it's designed well. You can sort of wheel it out, or you can do the, the snappy front flip. It's actually really easy, and it's fun. I mean, front flippers are fun. They're fun to manipulate. This one's done well. The action is pretty typical of a Civivi. Honestly, it's just maybe a hair smoother. It's nice. I have no issue with it whatsoever as far as front flippers go. This one is a joy. Let's go ahead and do the hardware check here real quick. Get out my tools. Of course, my tools are also listed down in the description right at the bottom, so you can check those out for yourself. They are very inexpensive. Civivi does a good job using T8 hardware, and I believe this one's not going to be any different. T8 for the pivot and T8 for the body screw. And then the pocket clip screws are going to be T6, which I'm not going to show because you can tell they're smaller. And that's usually the case. Let's go ahead and talk about carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see there it is definitely thinner than the Para 3. Let's go ahead and do height and length up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3, because these knives have slightly awkward dimensions. It's definitely nowhere near as tall because this is a front flipper. The flipper doesn't protrude, north or south, I guess, so to speak, the knife. And it is nowhere near as long as either of them. So the end result is that this is simply not a cumbersome object in the pocket. Let's go ahead and take a look at the inside here. You can see that we do have a little bit of milling on the liners. And given the fact that this is not, dimensionally thick anywhere, go ahead and give you guys a measurement of blade stock thickness. Yeah, not a thick blade. So the end result here is that the knife simply doesn't weigh very much. And I haven't weighed it yet, but let's do that together. 1.8 ounces. That's going to make pretty much every... Is that really the case? Okay. I honestly thought, I don't know why, I thought that it was going to be heavier than that. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It's just not a heavy knife. This is going to be comfortable for you to carry in almost any circumstance. If you like to wear tight pants, if you like to wear athletic shorts, if you like to wear khakis, jeans, whatever, you're going to be fine. This isn't something that, you know, is going to bother people. So let's go ahead and talk about the anatomy of this knife. And by the way, this knife comes in a bunch of different variants. This one here you're seeing in OD Green G10. I believe they've also got tan and black. They used to have a Damascus version. There are some new ones coming in aged copper and probably brass and whatever. I will link all of them down in the description so you guys can check out whatever is available at the time of this video. But as of the time of this recording, there's actually quite a few of these available. We have G10, some slightly peel ply textured G10 on top of steel liners. Nice Civivi pivot there, always like that. All the corners are nicely knocked down. There's a little bit of difference in texturing right here to here. People seeing this peel ply wondering if is that aggressive, is that harsh? No, in fact, it's nowhere near as aggressive or sort of grippy as like what's on the Spyderco Para 3, even though under the camera, this actually looks like it might be more aggressive. The Mckenna is not aggressive in any area. Everything is nicely knocked down, which is something that is typical of Civivi. The flipper tab, very, very easy to engage. Nice amount of jimping right here. You can see just resting your thumb up there and just pushing it over a little bit will break that detent, which is nicely tuned for the size of the knife. Just nice, like that. You might be wondering about that little hole there. I said something about that in the unboxing, and I was like, it's weird they put that hole there, and then you can't really engage it, because truthfully, no, you can't. Unless you have needle-like fingers, you cannot get in there and engage that. My viewers inform me that I don't have a lot of experience with Elijah Isham designs, but I know what they look like, and they said that's the Inisham thing, and Isham thing. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name. His designs are, you know, usually it's really easy for me to pick them out of a bunch, but I'll be honest with you, I looked at this and did not know initially that this was an Isham design. But my viewers inform me, you know, that's just something he does. It's not really in the way of anything. It just makes me want to engage it because it's there. But at the same time, if it wasn't there, this wouldn't have anything, you know, aesthetically going on to break up the really, you know, otherwise simple design. So, okay, that's fine. It's not really that big of a deal. But yeah, this is very easy to engage over and over and over again. You only have one choice for deployment, and that is by using that flipper, or that front flipper. What I appreciate about it is it's very easy to just wheel out if you don't want to do the full, you know, snappy flick. Or if you're just kind of learning and you haven't got it down yet, it's easy to do that. Absolutely. I've got no issues with that whatsoever. Let's go ahead and look at the blade. Of course, we have another satin finished blade from Civivi, which is what they do on almost everything. I'd really like to see some other finishes. I'm getting really tired of the same satin over and over and over again. It's shiny. It does look nice. You know, I mean, I guess in a basic way, it's fine. You know, that polishing, that excess polishing is going to help a little bit with corrosion resistance, which I don't think, is this D2? Yeah, I'm trying to get the light to reflect. You can see right there, it's D2. So D2 is not a stainless steel, but it's close at about 12% chromium. So I suppose that excess polishing is going to help a little bit. It's just something that's boring to me. I'd like to see a nice tumbled option, you know, with these blades, but okay, it's not really hurting anything. As per usual, it's a little bit sharp right there, and that's something that always bothers me with satin finished blades. Tumbled blades tend to knock that down a bit. Is that really going to cause a problem while you're using it? No, it's just something that bothers my fingers a little bit, and I'm nitpicky and becoming more nitpicky as I continue to do this. I guess we're going to call this a sheep's foot blade. Honestly, I kind of like how the blade looks, and I really appreciate that it's fully flat ground. It gets nice and thin down behind the edge. You can see down there, not much of durability out at the tip, but this is definitely going to do all of your EDC cutting tests, and it's going to do them efficiently because it is fully flat ground, and it is nice and thin. So yeah, you know, if you favor fidget factor and, you know, cutting performance, and you're looking for a budget blade, you know, if those are the three main things, then this checks those boxes, and it's going to do really, really well. The edge is done well. That's something to be expected of Civivi knives if you are not familiar with Civivi knives. I love that Civivi does their pivot on the handle, and they don't put anything on the blade other than the blade steel, and in this case, you actually have the Isham logo right there. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But what I hate is the paragraph all over the blade with the serial numbers and the blah, blah, blah. I don't like that. But they didn't do that here, so that's cool. This knife does have a mountable position for the pocket clip on the left-hand side, so left-handed people can enjoy this even though it's a right-handed liner lock. I don't like that we've got this pointy tail end, and they have, you know, because of the back end of this, they had to put a screw back here, and then they had to mount the pocket clip underneath the screw. It's not that big of a deal because the knife still carries plenty deep, but it's just a little thing that bothers me. It really shouldn't, it's not something that really should bother you all that much. It's just every time I see that, I'm like, I want the pocket clip at the top. I'm glad that they didn't include a lanyard hole because, I mean, we just live in a time period of the knife world where people aren't really utilizing that anymore, so it's just not really a thing. Ergonomically, so this is a smaller knife. Putting my fingers in the position that it wants me to put them in, I'm finding that my pinky wants to slip off that ramp back there, and I am locking in just fine. I mean, it's plenty comfortable. The jimping back here that's just meant for the front flipper doesn't really serve any purpose for me. I want to put my finger up here. I don't know that it necessarily needs that jimping. I don't know that I really am going to bear down on this knife super duper hard, or even if I was, that I would gain any sort of massive benefit with the jimping, so it doesn't really need to be there. Ergonomics are okay. I always want a 4-finger grip on my knife. That makes it, for me, something that I'm much less likely to carry. That's just a personal preference thing. That doesn't mean the design is bad. That's just, you know, for me. The pocket clip is pretty good. It has a bill. I don't like bills. I always talk about this. I like a nice swoop. Seems to work better. You know, in terms of getting over the pants, the clip is going to rise, you know, and it's going to sort of conform to the material you're pushing it over, rather than having initially a limited amount of space for that bill to tuck over the seam of the pocket. And then at the same time, this, in my experience, is more likely to catch on something and bend out or break. If it bends out, no big deal. Just pull it off, bend it back, you know, put it back on. But if it breaks, you don't have a pocket clip for a little bit until you can get a new one. I do like that it's deep carry, and I like that the screws are recessed. What I'm talking about in and out of the pocket is pretty minimal. Honestly, it does come in and out just fine, so I really don't have an issue with that. Back side of the pivot is the adjustment side. It's nice. We do have solid lockup at about 50%. The blade is, yeah, it's centered. It's centered. And then you're, whoops, still somewhat of a newbie with front flippers. I've been flipping this thing like crazy. It's got just a teeny tiny little bit of side to side. In my experience, Civivi knives, when they're all nicely tightened down, they don't have side to side, and I'm going to go ahead and say, based on my experience with Civivi, it will take a microscopic turn of that pivot and it will be just fine, which is usually going to be the case. There is no up and down blade plate whatsoever. This knife does have garaged stops, which is interesting. Let me get my light again. I like that because the stops function largely in the same way that external stops do. The pegs are on both sides, bracing against the frame. I like that. Not that it adds a needed benefit in a knife of this size. I always say, you know, it helps mitigate pressure away from the pivots if you're doing something outside of the realm of knife task with your knife. But I don't know, it's cool. You know, it's not really serving much of a purpose here, I guess, but it's neat. I like that they do that. It's neat that the stop pin is hidden. We do have a backspacer back here that's made out of G10. I didn't really mention that. Overall, this is a pretty good knife. I mean, you know, there are more and more and more budget front flippers out there. Some of them are good, some of them are really good, and most of them are okay, you know. But this knife comes in at $68. It's a little high. I kind of expected to see this, like most other Civivis, around the $50 to $55 mark. I'm not really sure what the $68 is all about, but okay, it's 13 up from my maximum. So, you know, if you're really, really interested in this knife, I guess you have to ask yourself, you know, based on what I'm saying, is it worth paying 13 extra dollars-ish, depending on your perspective on that, for a front flipper? I mean, is that where I'm not really sure where the money's going, but this isn't a situation where I'm looking at a $200 knife and they want $350 for it, you know, or like the worst one that I've seen, that Benchmade, that new Benchmade OTF, you know, where I don't know how they arrived at their price tag of over $400 in that thing, when I felt like I was looking at a $280 knife max. It's not like that. You know, we're looking at a budget knife. In my opinion, you know, most people define that as anything under 50. I kind of, you know, anything under 100, you know, really more so under 75, I call a budget knife. Yeah, I mean, it's a little outside of it's teetering on the top end of reasonable, but it's okay, you know, and it's $68 is not that much money. If you're really wanting a nice, well-made front flipper that's definitely going to perform well, definitely going to cut well, it's going to be nice, you know, it's going to do what you need it to do, and at the same time, it's going to be kind of fun to manipulate. Yeah, this knife is definitely going to go on my most recommended knives playlist. I do like this. It's not the best thing in the world from Civivi by a long shot. There are definitely other knives from Civivi that I like a lot more than this, and I will be linking Civivi knives in general down in the description so you guys can shop for yourselves if you want to. But this is good, as is the case with most things that Civivi makes. I've only had a couple of knives from them that I didn't like, so this is good. You know, it's decent. Its neat thing is that it's a small front flipper. But yeah, so it'll be going on my cheap knives I like playlist and also my most recommended knives playlist. Guys, that is going to be pretty much it for today's review and overview. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that metal complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.